Well, I'm back from GenCon. It was sweet. Let me tell you about it. I got to meet my friend Daniel Chang, who used to be a real close friend in Madison, where we'd always play Legacy and go to Legacy events for Magic the Gathering and compete. But then, you know, he moved away, I moved away, you know how it is, right? And so he lives in Indiana. And I got to see him at GenCon. And he told me a story of what happened to him, and I'm telling you that story now. Get your feels and your tissue paper ready, because this is a tearjerker, I gotta say. So, Daniel Chang is in a Magic event, a Magic tournament, like a side tournament. And he's doing pretty well in it, he's undefeated. And he ends up playing against this mom. And she's in the tournament because her kid's in the tournament, and they're both like kind of new, right? And so in the process of playing the game against him, it was limited. It was a draft, and so you have little decks. And so in the process of playing the game against them, she was like making all sorts of mistakes and apologizing to him and stuff for being new. And so he just sort of helped her like play the game, even though it's a tournament. And explained rules to her, and you know, generally was just very nice. I mean, he won, of course, but like he could have been a jerk. But instead he's like, oh, you probably don't want to do that because this guy has this, you know. Just pointing little stuff out like that so that she had a good experience. You know, she was probably just here because her kid's in the tournament. But it's important that you be nice to new players like this. And in his next round, in the finals, he played against a guy called Aaron. And he's like, didn't recognize him. He's like, oh, Aaron, cool, yeah, I'm D.W. Chang, you know, when there's trouble you. And they start talking, like they really hit it off. They start talking about Magic and when they started playing, and you know, how long have you been playing? Oh, that's sweet, you know, oh, you're into Legacy. And they're just like playing, and Dan Chang is winning and the game's kind of going long, but they're just like hitting it off friendship wise. And eventually the guy asks him like, so what was your first pack of Magic ever? Like, do you remember that? And Daniel Chang's like, yeah, I have a sad story about that. My first pack of Magic ever. The year is 1994. A young Daniel Chang is in a local comic store with his mother, and she tells him, here's a $5 bill. You can get any packs you want. And so he's holding the $5 bill out, doesn't even crumple it up. He's holding it out like a pigeon, you know, and turns over and looks at all the packs of cards on the wall. And he can get one pack of Legends for $5. Or he can get 5 packs of Fallen Empires for $1 each. And, well, you can guess what he got as a kid, and it was the 5 packs of Fallen Empires. I mean, so for people who don't play Magic, Fallen Empires is one of the lowest value, worst sets ever. An uncracked pack of Fallen Empires today is worth probably $1.50. And an uncracked pack of Legends that you can be sure hasn't been searched is probably $500. Just for the pack that contains a random amount of cards from Legends. And so the Legends set itself has cards that are worth $3,000 in it. And so you can imagine he's been kicking himself over this, and it ended up being a funny anecdote that he often tells people. And so after their game, they shook hands, and Aaron said, good game. And he's like, well, I don't think you recognized me. I'm not just Aaron, I'm Aaron Forsyth, the developer of Magic the Gathering. I work for Wizards. We enter these little side tournaments for fun to get to meet players who play the game. And we all bring with us one pack of cards that we give to somebody that we think is deserving, however we feel about that. And you didn't notice it, but I was watching you play against that mother and her kid before, and I thought you were just a great ambassador to the game with them. And so I think this can make up for that mistake you made when you were a kid. And he reaches into his pocket and he pulls out an uncracked pack of Legends and gives it to Daniel Chang. And so what a heartwarming story that was. Good guy Daniel Chang, like good guy competitor man, ambassador to the game, because he's so nice, when he was a kid, he didn't buy a pack of Legends, and Aaron Forsyth gave him, just so happened, the pack that he brought just so happened to be Legends from Wizard's Vault, you know, that they haven't opened yet. What a great end to the chapter of his life, right? What a book end, you know, of not choosing this pack, and then later on you're like so cool and like into the game and stuff that the person who makes Magic the Gathering like gives you that pack, and it happened to be the same one. Like, how awesome. So that was an awesome story, and by the way, no, he's not selling it. No, he's not opening it up. He is gonna frame it and just keep it as a memento. He's like, no, you know what? This chapter of my life is done. My mistake has been fixed. I'm not gonna open it up and see if there's thousands of dollars in it. I'm not going to sell it to some vendor for $500 or whatever unopened. You know, it's going in display, and that's it. And it'll be an awesome story. What a cool story. And so that's your Magic the Gathering competitive feel-good moment of the weekend. Played a lot of Magic, was in some Magic events. Played a lot of Age of Sigmar, was in Age of Sigmar GenCon Championships, which was definitely wishful thinking. It was not a big tournament. I apologize for the clickbait headline, but you've been fooled. There were like 12 people or something in the tournament, so top 8 is really just a misleading technicality than actually doing well. But what happened? Well, let's get into it. I brought the boys. I brought actual Beastclaw Raiders to this tournament. So clearly I wasn't exactly in it to win it, per se. But I was going to take these underrepresented, underpowered underdogs and make a real go at it. And so this is the list I brought. Optimized as much as I possibly could, I think. And it's Huskard on Thundertusk as the general. I was really back and forth on this guy about whether to take Thundertusks at all. Contrary to popular opinions, I don't think Thundertusks are very good. Spamming 4 of them is really good against some armies, but not the top armies. You just sort of really stick it to the elite guys, you know? You can bring a 4 Thundertusk list and do really well against a Stormcast opponent who's not playing very carefully. But for the most part, I feel like you struggle in the same matchups, and you have huge Achilles heels that are very easy to exploit. And honestly, like 6 damage for 380 points, I don't think you're getting max value out of your dollar any way you slice that, even if it's mortal wounds. And the fact that you can toss a few damage on him to make him suck generally keeps me away. So why did I choose him here? I wanted Yeti Battle Line, which you can get with Huskards on Thundertusk now. A Frostlord on Stonehorn is just better for the points you pay than a Huskard on Thundertusk, but perhaps my opponents would play incorrectly around him, and I could get some value out of him. And 9 Yetis are way better than a Hunter and 3 Frost Sabers, so I went with it. There were no Realm Artifacts allowed at the tournament, which hurts Beastclaw heavily, because our artifacts are trash. And the Realm Artifacts really do, like, tie the room together. It's really a shame that we can't use any battalions, because they're all bad. Because we would really love 2 Realm Artifacts in lists, but I digress. I took the Pelt, because, you know, sometimes we'll heal a Thundertusk. Anything to uncharge him. And I took Everwinter's Master, because we're going actual real Beastclaw Raiders, not doing the Grand Alliance thing. And I want to re-roll that die. The whole point of Everwinter's Master and the Allegiance ability is to make sure you always get re-roll 1s to save. If you don't get this, everyone in your army will die. I know that Radio Free Hammerhall goes on and on about re-rolling 1s is a bad bonus. I don't disagree with him. It is a bad bonus. However, so is my army. and I have no other options, and so the best thing I can hope for is a bad buff, is for 2 random chances at a bad buff. So here we are. If I was playing White Privilege the army like he was in Nurgle, then I would have all sorts of awesome buffs available to me. But anyway, so yeah, that's the game plan there. Is use Everwinter's Master to re-roll the die to always get 1s to save. The 3-inch move isn't even worth it almost ever, because it can't get you out of combat, which is what you would really want it to do. And it's a one-time effect that helps you overextend a little bit, but your opponent's going to get a turn. Running a Thundertusk out into the middle of nowhere to get the 1 shot is not worth it, because it will die on the counter charge. You need to keep him safe at all times. You're supposed to run Frostlords out there and overextend, because sometimes they can live through it, but a Thundertusk won't. And playing him that way will just get the guy killed or charted. And then there's 3 Frostlords on Stonehorn. These guys at 420 are good if they have an artifact. For instance, in Shyish, giving them Ethereal Amulet, so they're on a 3-up that ignores Rend, or giving them Mortal Wound Protection, or giving them the Thermal Rider Cloak for 4-inch movement plus flying, so they can't be Targ Pitted, which is a huge deal, because it's so easy to tar pit Beastclaw models for pretty much forever. Now, most of the artifacts I'm talking about are defensive, because for the most part the offensive ones are a little bit of a trap. So Frostlord on Stonehorn is good because he's fast, can run and charge. On the charge, he does d6 mortal wounds automatically. This is strong. He has 6 horn attacks, which are very inaccurate, but hit very hard and have Rend 2, which is really important. And his Frost Spear has decent attacks, 4 at 3/3, neg1 Rend, damage 3. Everything else he does is kind of okay. He has no ranged weapons, he is forced to charge, no flying. Command ability kind of sucks, actually. But overall, they're solid creatures. Since we only had 1 artifact, and I wasn't allowed to use realm artifacts, then it pretty much had to be the pelt on the Thundertusk. None of our other artifacts are really that good. Very situationally, the Mammoth Skull Plate can be exceptionally good. For instance, if you 100% know you're going to be fighting giant, massive regiments of guys with no Rend, then that's an excellent item to put on one of your heroes. But you can't be sure that. Almost everyone uses mostly guys with Rend, so I suppose, unless you know you're going to be fighting 80 skeletons, which apparently I should have foreseen, then Ice Mammoth Skullplate is just a little too narrow, I think. We don't play any Huskards, because that guy sucks. We don't play any Mournfang, because those guys suck. We don't play any Frost Sabers, because those guys suck, although they're very cheap, I'll say. We don't play Icebrow Hunter, because he sucks. He sucks real bad, and he's not even cheap. He's expensive and sucks. And we don't play any Battalions, because they suck. I've distilled down the only things that are good about Beastclaw Raiders, which is a Frostlord on Stonehorn, and Icefall Yetis kinda for their points. Icefall Yetis can be good, because it's 12 wounds for 120 points, so that's sort of like the 2-2 for 2 in Magic. That's like the baseline that you're looking for. They have okay attacks, I guess. You're going to do maybe 0, maybe 2 damage, maybe 4 damage with 3 of them. 4 you got kind of lucky, 0 you got kind of unlucky. Expect 2 for the most part. And they're at -1 to get hit in melee combat, which is good. You know, they only have a 6-up save, which means Rend 1 is mortal wounds to them. And they absolutely explode whenever anyone shoots them. However, you want people to shoot them in a way, because then they're not shooting your Thundertusk. So, fair trade. And the activation and piling in from 6 inches away is strong. It means they always get to fight first. And you can pull some shenanigans off with it. For instance, on your turn, you get to always retreat and run. Because running and retreating stops you from charging, but it doesn't stop you from piling in. And so on my turn, I always just retreat all of my Yetis out of combat and keep them, you know, 4, 5, 6 inches away somewhere else. you know, wrap around the units and then pile back in later on in the combat. They have this ability that lets them run and charge if they are near a Thunder Tusk, which is weird because they never charge, they only pile in. I guess, you know, it lets you really extend with them and go for a charge if need be sometimes, but it's a weird sort of steps on its own toes, you already kind of do that ability, which we find a whole lot of in the Beastclaw book, because it's just, rules-wise, it's written very badly. You have battalions that give your guys things they already have. You have Blizzard Speaker buff giving guys something they tend to already have. You have Icefall Yetis getting to run and charge when they can kind of do that already. There's just a lot of, like, random sameness in the book. It really deserves a digital re-release for 2nd edition, now that Battle Tombs are really good. So besides all that, oh boy, is it a fun list to play. And let's see if we can take some games from people running way better armies with way better rules. Let's go. So round 1 arrives, get the tournament pack. I've been waiting for this one forever. They released one a few weeks before GenCon, but it was like ancient from it seemed like it was from pre-General's Handbook and stuff. Like just weird stuff like, you know, Nagash and the Glotkin were both banned. I think Archaon was too, and that's weird because he actually sucks. You couldn't use any more than like 4 of the same unit in an army, which is just about impossible for some armies. Like, you know, imagine the person who brought Spiderfang Grots to the tournament. You know, they couldn't follow that rule. They only have 1 unit. It's called Spiderfang Grots, and that's it. They have 2 heroes and that 1 unit, right? And they're in no danger of winning the tournament or causing other people to have a bad time. So I'm not sure why they came up with that rule. There was just some weird-ass stuff in there. The limit for behemoths and artillery was 3 instead of 4. It just seemed like the dude's local meta must be, like, hyper-casual and think that banning stuff that isn't even that strong is better than just getting good. I don't know. But anyway, they re-released a new one for the tournament, and it basically played everything from the book, except it banned realm artifacts, realm effects, but let you play with endless spells. So get wrecked me, I guess. Like, what I needed was realm artifacts, and they gave us endless spells. Cool. And the scoring system was super weird. Like, I'm reading over the packet for round 1, and the scoring system was just super goofy. It gave you 6 points for winning a major victory, but then you could get, like, over 10 points for your secondaries and tertiaries. So you could lose the scenario and win actually by a lot if you just scooped up all the secondaries and tertiary. The secondaries were, you'd choose 2 of them and they're secret, and it's stuff like cast 2 spells, unbind 2 spells was another one. Have more than 10 models in your opponent's territory, shit like that. And I'm like, man, a lot of these are impossible for some armies to do, and not because they, like, decided to make them impossible, just because, like, there's a lot of armies where your wizards are just terrible, and so you don't take them. It's okay to have specific secondaries when you have 6 to choose from. For instance, if you had a wizard, you just automatically got 2 or 3 points for the secondary. It was automatic. But if you had to choose one of the ones that didn't have you, like, take a wizard, it was actually hard to do. So some of them just rewarded you for being a faction that had tons of different options and made it really hard for people who didn't. And so I felt a little underprivileged as Beastclaw with this one. But my first round opponent was super nice guy. I think kind of like a famous podcast man. Everybody knew who he was. He does a podcast forever. I'm bad with names, and so of course I don't know his name. I'm sorry. And I lost the tournament pack that says his name, so I'm sorry about that. But he was a super nice guy, and it was a fun game. And so we're looking over this pack, and I'm like, man, this is super weird. And he's like, oh, don't worry. This is West Coast pairings. I've done this all the time. Your secondaries and tertiaries, they don't count for who wins the round. It's just for tiebreakers. So the only thing that matters is winning on the scenario. So don't worry about that. And I'm like, oh, cool. That's a fine solution then. I'm like, I was like a little annoyed, you know, by the secondaries and tertiaries and stuff. But then I'm like, oh, okay, this is cool. All right, problem solved. And so moving into it, I even forgot to choose secondaries because because they were so hard for Beastclaw to do. And, you know, Battle Round 2 rolls around, and I'm like, you know what, I should just choose these, and I didn't right away. But I feel like choosing them now, having seen what has happened in the game, I feel like I can only do that at an advantage. So should I just roll for him? And he's like, yeah, that's a good solution. So I rolled for him, and that was that. So the game was really fun. It was 3 places of power against Stormcast. He didn't have any of the new Stormcast stuff. So he had Liberators instead of Sequitors, he had Retributors in a 10-man unit instead of Evocators, etc. But, the new thing he did have was a Knight Incanter, and the Celestial Comet, like the 100-point Endless Spell Ice Comet. Stormcast Ice Comet shows you what a 100-point Endless Spell can really be. Like, that thing is powerful and easy to cast, and easy to unbind and recast again every turn. Does tons of damage. Super long range. Can't blow back and hurt you. This is an endless spell actually worth its 100 points. And so the Purple Sun should take some notes. He had a Lord Ordinator and 2 Ballista and some Judicators. So he had a decent gun line and an artillery spell line for the backfield. And then front up, he had a whole bunch of Liberators, select heroes, you know, all the good ones, Relictor, Venator, the guy with the bow and the Star-Fated Arrow that always misses. Spoiler alert, it missed. A Lord Celestant and 10 Retributors. So, I set up like this. The objectives were, you know, left, right, and then there was one objective right on that piece of Dreadfort, right in that center triangle of it. It's 3 places of power, so only heroes can capture. And my game plan is, if I kill all his heroes, he can't score points, and I will win. And I'm going to park a Frost Lord inside that goofy-ass piece of terrain, and try to stay there the whole game. I put 2 Frost Lords on the right, 1 Frost Lord on the left, and bubble wrapped my Thunder Tusk so that he couldn't drop guys close enough to it to matter. Thanks for that with the terrain piece. And I put the Frost Lord over on the left here alone as a tempting bait for the 10 Retributors to come down and try to kill. Now, Frost Lord on Stonehorn is perfectly situated to actually fight Retributors. For once, Stone Skeleton actually does something, right? Because all of these guys are damaged 2, and all of their mortal wounds happen 2 at a time. So for once, he's actually taking straight up half damage from these guys, and I'm feeling good about the fight. When it's over, I feel I can take a few of them out, but they'll probably kill him eventually. But he'll tie them up, and the whole rest of my army can move right around the map and move 4 Retributors after they land. Will never be able to catch him. And I'll essentially take them out of the fight by doing that. They'll just never be useful again, because they're too slow. I don't think they could ever catch me. So he goes first, drops the Stormcast Comet into the center of my army, hitting everyone in the whole army with like 2 or 3 mortal wounds, except for the Frost Lord on the far left there. Also drops Knight Venator down on the middle point, and Lord Celestant down on the left point. Knight Venator shoots Star-Fated Arrow, and of course it misses, because it's sort of infamous for always missing, but it's not the Star-Fated Arrow that sucks. It's just the average Age of Sigmar player being exposed to a truth about the game and misinterpreting it. Any one attack sucks. Because the chances of attacks working are simply way less than anyone thinks. So like, one attack hitting on 3s, wounding on 2s with Rend 1 against a normally 4-up save, that's a 63% chance not to do damage, okay? It's worse than a coin flip by a significant amount. And people just need to realize that, alright? It's not the star-fated arrow that sucks. It's that if a guy has only 1 or 2 attacks, no matter how good they seem, it basically sucks. And all the random like D6 damage and stuff they're applying onto the end of a single attack with quote-unquote like good bonuses to hit and wound, that's a carrot at the end of a stick. Like, you're flipping a coin. And if you think you're really unlucky because you're flipping a coin and it's coming up tails, when it was a 60% chance to come up tails, you're just mistaken about the whole situation. Alright, let's make this attack actually insane, right? 1 attack, 2s to hit, 2s to wound, rend 2 against a 4-up save, 58% chance to hit. So just better than a coin flip with an absolutely insane attack. Like, AoS players just got to get it through their heads that 1 attack, no matter how good it looks, or if you extrapolate a little bit, a small amount of good-seeming attacks are just not. The minority of the time, they're amazing, but they're not consistent. And that generally means they're bad, unless something else is happening here. It's like I was explaining to somebody why Mournfangs suck. And I'm like, their only good damage attacks are 2 attacks per model hitting on 4s and 3s, rend 1. That sucks. And they're like, are you kidding? 4s and 3s, rend 1, damage 3 is amazing. Well, it's amazing if you're attacking 30 times, but if you're attacking twice, you're going to do 0 damage with that. So yeah, I do think it is bad. And then he drops 10 Retributors down 9 inches away from the Frost Lord. Bait taken. Alright, feeling good. Rolls boxcars to charge him and kills him from full life to 0, even though he was taking half damage. Okay, that was faster than I thought it would be. And landed on 2 objectives with his heroes scoring both. From the sky. Now, you had to move onto the objective to score it. And a setup is not a move. But he didn't believe me, and the TO didn't believe me, and I didn't want to waste everyone's time arguing it and seeming like a douche, so I just let him do it because I figured I could win anyway. I should have pointed it out later that, you know, it didn't work how they thought it did, but I forgot by that time, so. My turn. I move my whole army away from the Retributors, so they're stranded in no man's land forever, and for the rest of the game they don't do anything, which is awesome. Plan worked. Thundertusk shoots Lord Celestin in the face and kills him on a 2-up. My opponent said that that was overpowered, which I got an inward chuckle about, because let's look at the situation. Let's just review, right? You took 10 Retributors and deep struck them from the sky wherever you wanted for automatically, for free. Killed a 420-point Frost Lord on Stonehorn full to dead before he could even attack on turn 1. And teleported 2 heroes onto 2 objectives for free automatically and scored points on them. And I killed a 100-point hero with a 380-point behemoth whose only thing is to do that, and mine's the thing that's overpowered. Alright, okay, cool. just so we're clear. I don't begrudge the guy at all. It's just, I run into this so much with Thundertusks. Like, it might as well be called Frost-Wreathed Salt. People just irrationally hate this thing. They can't think clearly any longer when this happens, right? When you do 6 mortal wounds to some guy at 18 inches away on a 2-up, they're like, all sort of reason and logic like, how many points did you pay to be able to do that? Can the guy do anything else? If I do 3 damage to him, can he do that anymore? No. If I do 5, can he do that anymore? No, he's down to a D3 now. Like, is there any way to counterplay? Of course, right? But all that doesn't matter. You rolled a die and you rolled a 3, and that guy's dead, and the person's just like, that's bullshit, right? They go temporarily insane. Anyway, long story short, High Noon shot that guy. Frostlord on Stonehorn number 2 was a little monster truck that drove up the Chaos Dread Fort, crashed into the Night Venator for 6 mortal wounds, and flung his body off of the parapets to land dead onto the ground without even needing to get into combat, and score the point. And so now the game is, this Frostlord must stay here, because this battle plan is written, I think, a little bullshit, where the snowballing is hard, no pun intended. You score 1 point the first round you have it, you score 2 points the second round you have it, you score 3 points the third round, etc. And so if you're playing with some Stardrake unkillable thing, you just camp it out, or like Marathi, you just camp it out an objective and score ever-increasing amount of points, and people are just left out of the game. Like, it's so... 3 Places of Power is so exploitative if you have a big, durable hero to just camp out in the objective and then snipe your opponent's heroes. And so I think it could do with a little tweaking, this battle plan, but that's beside the point. Regardless, the way the battle plan wasn't fair helped me, so I guess cool. So for the rest of the game, I just camped out there. And it became, if I kill all his heroes, he can't score any points, and so I'll just win. Meanwhile, I positioned myself in the Chaos Dreadhold so that it would be as hard as possible to get guys up into it to fight me. Now, he still parked Liberators about 10 inches away, if you count how they have to, like, climb over stuff. So that the downside of my Stonehorn, and people often forget this, you have to charge if there are units within range of him. It's a big downside. It can pull you off of objectives, like it almost did in this game. So I had a clever idea, which I'm pretty proud of. I used my command point every turn, which lets you reroll charges, and it doesn't say reroll failed charges. So I would reroll the charge whenever I succeeded to make sure I failed it, and got to stay on the objective and keep scoring points. So that was sweet. I got to do a cool interaction with Beastclaw, and I didn't think I'd be able to. Right around bottom of turn 3, it became clear to me that he probably couldn't win the scenario. And so, since secondaries and tertiaries don't actually hurt you if your opponent gets them, they're just for tiebreakers, I'm like, alright, well, you got any secondaries and tertiaries to do? Because I think the game's about wrapped up, but let's get all our side effect stuff, since, it doesn't hurt me if you get those, like, let's clean up on these points. And he's like, oh yeah, cool, sounds good. Anyway, the game ended. I won with, like, I don't know, I had a bunch more victory points than him. I killed all his heroes, except for the Lord Ordinator, I think. I think he was still alive at the end. And, alright. First major victory down. I didn't get many secondaries and tertiaries because, well, I rolled randomly for them, and none of them were really very easily doable for me. That's how the game ended up working out. But that's okay, because I got the victory for the round. Although, when we submitted our scores to the TO, he said that, actually, my opponent was mistaken. That's not how they're calculating the points. It's not just tiebreakers. It's whoever has more total points, including the secondaries and tertiaries, that person wins the whole round. And so my opponent got all of his, and had more points than me, even though I won a major victory in the scenario, and so he won round 1. So what a shitty way to start it out. Because of my mistake at not making sure that was the case, I lost round 1 in a 3-round tournament, so it's over. So that sucked, man. Like, that fucking sucks. It is a teaching moment, and it's a cautionary tale. And so being a good general isn't just making good decisions in the game. I made clever, tactical plays that weren't immediately obvious. On the table, I played very well. But the problem is, on the table is not 100% where being a good general resides. And often before a game even begins. And often before a tournament even begins. It's making sure you know what your objectives are, what your true objectives are, and here I failed. It's building a good list. That's being a good general. People glaze over this stuff. People look down their noses at net listers, like finding somebody else's list and running it. Being a good general means having a good list. And in a sense, it doesn't matter actually how you got that good list. It just needs to be good. And whether you're the kind of person that can come up with cool lists, or you can take somebody else's and improve it, or maybe you're not good at making lists and so you just use someone else's. That's being smart. You are understanding that you have a weakness, and you're overcoming it. I don't know how... Well, I guess I do know how, but... A lot of people have this stigma against net listing. They try to shame people for copying someone else's list. There aren't that many units in Beastclaw, okay? You know, Stormcast and Khorne have a whole bunch of units, but, you know, Ironjaws really don't. The lists just start looking the same even if you're not trying to copy them. And, I don't know that having a social contract that promotes having shit lists and shames people for having good lists is healthy for the game. In fact, I think it's unhealthy for the game. I think it's a bad way to think. I think it's a bad opinion to have. I see a lot of people talking about, you know, what it means to be a good general. And you don't want to win... You want to win a game based on being a better general than your opponent. You don't want to win based on, you know, them not knowing something or, you know, or like a trick or something like that, right? And I applied this in this game, for instance. I detected that my opponent might not be 100% on the new 2nd edition rules. And so when he was making a mistake that would be very costly to him in the game, he was putting wounds on his Retributors because of how he positioned them previously in the game. Starsoul Mace guys were kind of at the end of little chains. And so he was going to put wounds on guys like 2 or 3 guys down. And I stopped him. I'm like, hey, maybe you don't know they changed how coherency rules work in 2nd edition. At the end of any turn, if the unit's out of coherency, it's not just that it can't move, it's that all the guys that aren't in coherency die. And so because of that, you probably don't want to put the wound on that guy, because I think you're unaware of how the rules are. And he was unaware of it. And he's like, oh man, I get he didn't like the rule, and like, he had previously moved his guys that game with the understanding that the rule was different, so he had to, like, I think he had to kill a Starsoul guy instead. But it still saved him from losing like 2 or 3 other dudes. And so this is the kind of thing that I think is just being a good sportsman. You know, you probably don't want to make this obvious mistake because I think it's clear you just don't know how the rules work, right? Like, that's one thing. But if I think it's another thing, I think it's different if... So when I'm putting my models down on the table, I'm telling my opponent the cliff notes of what they do. So I'm putting Thundertusk down and I'm saying, this guy is an 18-inch shot with a gigantic cannon that will do 6 mortal wounds to you. And he has an 18-inch move. So 26-inch threat range on massive character sniping cannon. Can't do anything else. If you put some damage on him, he sucks. Damage goes way down. And then, like, that's the kind of thing. And then, like, Frostlord on Stonehorn. 12-inch move, can run and charge. Does way more damage on the charge than not on the charge. And if you have mortal wounds or 2 damage weapons, he takes less damage from that. 3-up save. And so I'll give people the cliff notes when I'm putting stuff down. And usually it's like, what's their movement? What's their effective threat range if they're ranged? Wounds save, and then like weird tricks or something like that. So I'll say all their disadvantages as well. Like, Stonehorn must charge. Thundertusk sucks if you do 3 damage to him. Has a heal, you know. This is the guy with the artifact. This is, like, I'll do that at the beginning of the game, because setup takes forever anyway. But then later in the game, if my opponent, and this happened in round 3, moves a Bloodsecrator from out of line of sight into line of sight and within range of Thundertusk, like, I'm not going to stop him and be like, hey, are you sure you want to get into range of my sniper cannon that I told you about at the beginning of the game? I think that's, you know, I won't babysit my opponents, right? I won't hold their hand and help them beat me, but I will stop them from making mistakes that I think they're purely ignorant of. I won't stop them from making mistakes I told them about, right? Or that they could look up on their phone, or ask me if they cared to. You know, I had an opponent, like, what's the range on Thundertusk again? And I'm like, 18 inches, 8-inch move, and a 1 in 6 chance of an extra 3-inch move that I'm going to try not to get. Like, that was my sentence, right? I think those two things are different, and that's why I bring them up. because I didn't correct my opponent when he ran his dude in front of my huge missile cannon. But I did when my opponent was going to apply wounds wrong to a model that would cause him to lose half his squad. And why I think those are different. Why I think those are distinct. So anyway, you know, my poor opponent, unfortunately, like, he was nice. His army was cool. I had a good play experience with him. I need to be more careful in the future. You know, move on. You can't get tilted at tournaments, and I didn't get tilted here. Round 2, played against the guy I drove there with, of course. And he's playing Death. Death is a hard counter to Beastclaw. Many armies are a hard counter to Beastclaw, but Death is a real hard counter to Beastclaw. They have everything we're bad against. Massive regiments. We're real bad against getting tar pitted. We're real bad against debuffs. Your 420 point guy is actually doing 0 damage in an entire fight and then taking 6 from skeletons. And so it really sucks. The only thing Death doesn't have too much of is maneuverability, but they can depending on what their list is. So it's real bad. This was a struggle. You know, he's played against me a lot. He knows exactly how Beastclaw works. He knows he's going to win this. And we joke about maybe just going to get lunch, but we decide to play anyway because we want to play Age of Sigmar. So let's go. I'm going to give it a serious go. I enter into... So, like, this round begins, and I'm like... First of all, I'm doing my secondaries and tertiaries. And I'm not just letting my opponent do theirs. Like, I'm not making that mistake again. And secondly, if I don't get a double turn, I cannot win. That's how much better Death is than Beastclaw. It is impossible for me to win unless I take 2 turns in a row and my opponent gets unlucky or messes up and I get lucky on top of that. That's how stacked of a matchup it is. So let's get lucky, right? Let's play perfectly and get lucky. So here's the setup. This is Border Wars. Your opponent's objective is worth 4. The 2 middle ones are worth 2, and yours is worth 1. You can leave, and it's yours until they capture it. Here's how the setup went. He put the left skeletons down first, and so I put a Thundertusk right in the middle. He put Necromancer down on that terrain over there. I put Frostlord right next to Thundertusk. He put 40 skeletons on the center point, and then I started putting everything on the right. I'm going to spin cycle him. We're doing the spin cycle. This is a tactic that I often have to do as Beastclaw. The one thing we have over many opponents is we're faster than them. And so you punish their slow movement guys by putting them in the spin cycle, i.e. you rotate around the board, moving away from your opponent's slow-ass dudes, so that essentially it's like they're not affecting the game and they're useless. And so my plan is I capture the first objective, score a point, score 2 points by getting to the second one, and then curve around and crash into Nagash and the 40 skeletons. And that's the hill I die on. The gravesite right there, but if I kill those 40 skeletons and body block that gravesite while scoring 4 points on his side of the board, I can win on points while getting tabled but not letting him summon a new unit of 40. And that's the plan. So we start the game out. I start spin cycling right, capture both points, score 3 points. He starts spin cycling to his right as well, but can't quite make it to that objective because his guys are slow. And so he only scores 1. The Morghasts, which you can kind of see behind that numinous oculum there, shift closer to Nagash to be able to countercharge me. Battle round 2. Initiative proceeds as normal. Stonehorn charges Morghasts. Stonehorn charges 40 boys. Thundertusk shoots the skeletons that are the only ones in range. They take, I think, like 3 damage or something from it. Frostlord kills the Morghasts. Skeletons do 1,000,000 damage to the Frostlord, putting him at like 3 life. He swings back and kills a bunch of them. A bunch of them regenerate. Nagash finishes Frostlord off. Oh, gold-tinted Frostlord. He gets debuffed by about 1,000,000. And he gets Fading Vigor and I think double Overwhelming Dread. So he's actually useless for the rest of the game. The last Frostlord gallops up, kills the rest of the skeletons, and I have enough guys around there to body block the objective so he can't resummon a new 40. I score the turn 4 double turn, which is what I need to be able to win the game. Scored 4 more points on his objective. His turn, he kills a bunch of my guys. Turn 5 rolls around. I have 1 more point than him. If I win priority a second time, I can win the game. If he wins priority, he will table my army and win the game. He wins priority, he tables my army, wins the game. It was a hard-fought, long battle. I got the double turn I needed, but I apparently needed to win priority twice to be able to beat death. I was real close. I did about as well as you could ever expect Beastclaw to do against a well-played Nagash and 80 skeleton list, but it was not enough. It was probably a better line to kill the to attack the skeletons first and just hope the Morghasts get unlucky, because they can get unlucky. Skeletons can't get unlucky because they bell curve out at just about the same damage every time. You're rolling 1,000,000 attacks, you're rerolling ones to hit, you just about can't get unlucky. I feel like it was an error. I should have attacked the skeletons first and then hoped the Morghasts got unlucky. So that was my mistake. He made a small mistake where he didn't unsummon his spell portal and resummon it again on turn 2's hero phase. But he did summon new endless spells in such a manner to body block me from being able to get anywhere with a few of my behemoths because their bases are so big that he was able to section off pieces of the board for me not to be able to enter, which delayed me by an entire turn. So he had some clever plays. I had some clever plays. He got lucky. I got lucky. He made a mistake. I made a mistake. And I won a priority and he won a priority. So in the end, everything being equal, Nagash should win, and he did. I'm 0-2, although I feel like I'm 1-2. So moving into round 3, I'm playing against a guy who also has only lost. As is becoming tradition, unfortunately and randomly, my last round opponent of a tournament is a Khorne player who's having a bad day. This happened at Adepticon, and it happened at GenCon Championships. Besides the record of 0-2, which I too was at, I didn't know he was having such a bad day until we started chatting after the game, so keep that in mind, so you don't think I'm a dick. But I'm playing against Khorne. You know, if there's one army that this build of Beastclaw Raiders is good against, it's Khorne. Your Thundertusk has never been better than he is against an army with no shooting, no magic, no reach, and vulnerable 5 and 6 wound, like dudes for 140 points that make most of your army totally immune to battle shock and give +1 attack for all their weapons. Like, absolutely crazy synergies. Force multiplying monster for a small amount of points, but on a very weak body, and that's the downside. And so this is exactly where Thundertusks want to be, is playing against a Khorne army. And furthermore, a 3-up save behemoth rerolling 1s eats reavers and stuff for breakfast. Like, they can't do damage to him. So I'm just good against Khorne. The battle plan was automatic draw game, the battle plan, which is what everyone called it. I have an objective in my territory. He had one in his. There are no victory points. It's just if anyone controls both at once, the game is instantly over and they win. So the best strategy is just to turtle up and try to get kill points, which womp womp, like not a very good battle plan. Furthermore, it reads, at least in this pack, You only control an objective if you have 5 or more models around it. I have 13 models in my whole army. If he kills 4 Yetis who have 6-up saves, I don't have enough models to hold both at once. And no, you can't just leave one. You have to stick around. So it's actually impossible for me to get a major victory on this battle plan. And all the secondaries are bullshit. Cast 2 spells, unbind 2 spells. I have no wizards, he has no wizards. So, like, already almost half of the secondaries are literally impossible for us. Like, it's just stupid. And they're like, run over to a piece of terrain that's far away from your opponent and search it for 1 turn. And then go somewhere else and search some different piece of terrain. Just weird and stupid secondaries that are very obnoxious to do. He's like, well, if you need 5 models around a point, I guess all I have to do is kill 4 Yetis, and then you can't win the game. And I'm like, yep, sounds like a good plan. If I kill your whole army, you can't win. And that's my plan. And he's like, okay. And long story short, I killed his whole army. Blood for the blood god, man. I guess Khorne cares not. Khorne didn't care last time, and he certainly didn't care this time. Thundertusk blew heroes up. Frostlords crashed into Reavers and just threw them left and right. He summoned a lot of demons. He was doing some clever summoning tricks towards the end of the game to try to get 10 bloodletters near my objective to be able to snap capture both, but it didn't work out. My stuff was too killy, and Reavers died too quick. His Reavers did not have Rend. He chose the option that lets you reroll 1s to hit. I mean, yeah, he was more consistent at hitting, but he sent, you know, just a whole bunch of attacks against dudes with 3-up rerolling 1 saves. Yeah, it just didn't do any damage. Like, you need that Rend. So my Frostlords all lived, and I got to drive monster trucks all over his army. And it was awesome. So all said and done, my teammate in Team Heavy Magic got 3rd place with Nagash. Only losing to the mirror match. So awesome. If you organize the Excel spreadsheet correctly, I did pretty well in kill points as well. And I almost tabled just about all my opponents, which was awesome. I would play this list again, and I will play it again in 2 weeks at a local tournament. So the second tournament report, this time with more pictures. I couldn't take many pictures, and it wasn't as thorough of a tournament report as I would have liked to give you guys because my phone was dying. It was GenCon. It was hard to plug in places, so I apologize. Everyone there was super friendly. Everyone there was a real nice guy. There were people with hard lists, and there were people with softer lists. But most people there had a good list and were competitive and were just real nice guys. Yet again, I mean, it's the same thing from Adepticon. The tournament scene in Age of Sigmar for tournaments you have to travel to have just about only awesome dudes and a general lack of that guys, which plague local tournaments. But that guys typically don't have their life together enough to really like go somewhere and play against real tournament competitors. If you're being in like an angle shooting, you know, that guy sort of douchebag, like a real tournament player won't stand for it, you know. They'll try to be nice and let stuff slide if they think that you really don't know what's going on. Because I found tournament players are just really nice guys that, you know, honestly, they're a cut above your average player you find. And usually it's the opposite. You know, in other stuff, usually the real competitive people at tournaments, they're the dicks, right? They're the assholes. But in Age of Sigmar, it's opposite day. You know, all the really competitive tournament people that I've played against at these tournaments you have to go to, they're like extra cool people. They're way cooler than the average Age of Sigmar player. Get wrecked, average Age of Sigmar player. I guess I'm accidentally calling you out, but like, usually it's the other way around, right? The hyper-competitive must-win people, like, they're the assholes, but not so. And so if people are concerned or apprehensive about entering an Age of Sigmar tournament, you gotta do it. You play against cooler people with more interesting armies, and the tactics are even more interesting. And you get to see like a million people's armies set up all over the place. Like, I took pictures of people's armies for a half an hour before the tournament instead of reading the tournament pack, because I was just talking to dudes about their army. Man showed up with full Stormcast, everything was non-metallic metals. And I told him to go fuck himself to his face. And we had a good laugh about it, right? Like, had I read the tournament pack during that half an hour, I probably wouldn't have lost round 1. But, like, this is the kind of shit that people do at tournaments. Like, it's awesome. A guy we were just talking to in between rounds 1 and 2, he's like, hey, you guys want to go get lunch for a lunch break? And we're like, yeah. So we just randomly went to lunch with a dude we met right there. And he was a cool dude. We just left our armies there because, again, people don't steal this stuff. They ask if it's okay that they take a picture of your stuff because it's so well painted. These are the type of people you're dealing with. I was happy to be proven right about my experience at Adepticon. Adepticon wasn't an exception where it was just only cool bros there. And then, but like all the other tournaments, like, you know, who knows? No, tournaments were just everybody's really cool.